There were some drivers that came down pit road, and some got tires, and some got fuel, and some had other issues.
Man, that hurt.
Ah,
Dang, who put that there?
A pit stop is often one of the most exciting parts of a race, as it's very different from anything you see done to a street car. It's very fast, it's very hectic, it's very choreographed, and it's just overall very interesting to watch. Pit stops have the ability to win or lose you the race, depending on how they go. So every second definitely matters, but you already know this if you watch racing. What you may not know is what the hot side of pit road is, what the cold side of pit road is, the choreography of each side, or even the fact that the road crew actually will assist the pit crew in doing a pit stop. And of course, there are all kinds of rules around doing a pit stop because these things need to be done safely, and there are so many moving parts on the entirety of pit road that you just have to have these rules if you want it to be done safely. The first thing is getting onto pit road. The driver will be responsible for getting down to pit road speed before what's called the commitment line. This is a line that is painted on the racetrack in yellow right before pit road starts, and there's an orange box on the outside of this line, the side away from the wall. This orange box signals the end of the commitment line. To come down pit road legally, all 4 tires of the race car have to go below this box. If they don't, the driver is not allowed to come down pit road or they will be given a penalty. Now, as I said, the driver does need to be at pit road speed. So how does the driver know how fast they're going to get to pit road speed? Well, they don't know how fast they're going, actually. You see, these race cars don't have speedometers in them, since it's really not necessary to have, and we don't really have the sensors or anything in the car to make them work anyway, so we really don't need them, and it's just extra weight. What we do know, however, is the rollout of the tires, we know the gear ratios, we know the final drive ratio, so we can take all of that information, do a little math, and figure out what engine RPM equals pit road speed. This engine RPM is shown on what's called a tach inside the car, short for tachometer, and this gauge is a special one made specifically for racing, and it has lights on it that we can actually program. This will vary a little bit from driver to driver or even crew chief to crew chief, but suffice it to say that these lights will progress up in increments from yellow to green to red, and the driver will know what light means what speed based on a sticker that we place on the dash. Sometimes if you listen to team radio, especially at the start of the race, the drivers will come down pit road to test pit road speed during the initial pace laps. And if you listen to team radio, you can hear the spotter remind the driver of how many lights they should see and which color. And you'll hear the crew chief give any kind of directions as far as whether they can go faster than the lights show or slower than the lights show. Now, once the race car is down to pit road speed and across the commitment line, they have to get into their pit box. Now, these pit boxes are chosen by the crew chief for each car, and each crew chief gets to choose in the order that they qualified the week before. So this means if you qualified first last week, you get to pick your pit stall first this week. Wherever that stall is, the driver is allowed to drive through a maximum of 3 pit boxes to get into and out of his pit box. And when they say drive through, it really means contact, as if even one tire goes through the box, they are considered to have driven through it. And as far as the boxes themselves, they are bigger than the race car, which is necessary for safety and being able to work on the race car, but it also allows the driver to position the car inside the box a little differently depending on what we need. For instance, if there is a car pitting in the box directly in front that will be in the way when we try to leave our pit box, we can have them stop still in our pit box but a little bit short, and that gives us a little bit of extra room in front of the car once the pit stop is over to be able to leave. As the car approaches the pit box, once they get to one stall away, then the hot side pit crew members are allowed to go over the wall. By hot side pit crew members, these are the ones that you're probably thinking of when you think of a pit stop. You pretty well know the roles of these pit crew members if you watch racing at all, and they're fairly self-explanatory simply off of their name alone. So I won't spend too much time here, but in short, The changers, well, they are the ones hitting the lug nuts to change the tires. They'll pull the tire off, and they may even send the tire towards the pit wall to be caught by another team member, just depending on the choreography that team uses. The tire carrier will carry the new tires over near the changers so they can put them on the race car as soon as the changers get the old tires off. The tire carrier can also make adjustments to the race car with what's called a wedge wrench, which goes into the back window and affects the springs in the rear of the car or the track bar height. This, along with tire pressure and grill tape, are the only adjustments allowed by NASCAR to change the way a car handles during the race. The jackman, who's kind of like the quarterback of a pit crew, will be the one that obviously jumps over the wall to jack the race car up. However, once the car is up, you'll also see him grab one of the new tires to hang it for one of the tire changers. The fueler is obviously the one that puts fuel in the race car. However, unlike a lot of the other crew members, the only thing he is allowed to do is put fuel in the race car. Besides that, he can only redirect a tire that's headed towards pit wall with his leg or foot, but he can't do anything else to the race car, and no one else is allowed to fuel it. The driver service crew member is usually someone who is on the race team themselves, not necessarily the pit crew, and they are allowed to assist the driver with safety systems like belts or the window net or the steering wheel, radios, and things like that. However, they're mostly known for handing the driver a bottle of water or pulling what's called a tear-off off of the windshield. A tear-off is like a big clear sticker that we put several layers of on the windshield before a race, so we can easily give the driver a clean windshield free of debris. Now, speaking of being a race team member instead of a pit crew member, like I said, there are guys who are just a part of the team and not necessarily the pit crew themselves who do what's called pit support for the pit stop and help out the pit crews. You see, they can't do everything on their own. They obviously are very important, but there are some jobs that need to be done that most people wouldn't think about. For instance, the tire carrier can only carry 2 tires, and that's enough to do the right sides, but it's not enough to do the left sides. Those have to be rolled in from team members behind the pit wall. These tires also need to be brought out of the way in a controlled manner, so there will usually be another team member ready to catch the tires as they're rolled back towards pit wall. You might also be aware that there are 2 fuel cans that are used during a pit stop to get a car completely full, so you have to have someone to catch the empty fuel can, as well as someone to hand the new fuel can to the fueler over the wall. The changers also need a little bit of help, as you have to have someone throw their air hose out of the way of the car so that it doesn't get caught under the splitter or the rear bumper, and then that same person will have to pull the slack out of the hose as they come back to the left side of the car to keep it from being in the way. And then lastly, but certainly not least, you have the signboard holder. This person's responsible for putting the sign out in the box so that the driver knows where to stop. Typically, the driver will aim their left front headlight, which I know it's not a real light, it's a sticker, but bear with me. They will aim their left front headlight to hit that board, just to tap it. Remember how I said you could have a driver maybe stop short if there's a car going to be in front of them when they try to leave their pit stall? This is how they do that. The team uses this signboard to tell the driver exactly where they want them to stop within the pit box. And then usually whoever does the sign, since their job is over pretty quickly, will throw the sign back behind them and come back to the pit wall to either catch tires or maybe roll a tire in. And there are other jobs that can be shared between crew members as well. Every team does it a little bit differently, just like every team does their pit stop choreography a little bit different. Once the race car is serviced, then the driver has to leave pit road, again being careful not to cross through more than 3 boxes, and someone, usually the crew chief in my experience, will tell the driver either 1 lane or all the way to the wall, depending on if there's another race car coming, to let them know how far out they can go. The driver will get back up to pit road speed as fast as possible, and if everything on the pit stop goes well, they hopefully don't lose any spots or may even pick up a couple in the process. Of course, you have to be careful not to have any equipment stuck on the race car. Sometimes the fuel cans can get stuck, sometimes a jack can get stuck, and you don't want any of that. So now you can see how optimized these pit stops really are, and though they are chaotic, they're not quite as chaotic as it looks. Choreography is absolutely everything when it comes to a pit stop, and these teams know that. They will practice multiple times during the week, and even the team members on the cold side of pit road will practice with the pit crew some as well, just to make sure that everything is timed out right. Pit stops are just one more thing that keeps these stock cars far from stock. Hey, don't forget, if you like what you saw, maybe give the video a like and maybe even subscribe if you want to see more. Don't forget to leave topic suggestions down in the comments below, as that will really help me make sure that I'm bringing you guys the information you want.